Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. And we have an emergency show. We didn't do it ahead of time because I wanted a lot of the details to kind of come out. But everyone probably knows at this point, James Franklin was basically fired at Penn State. I don't know what the term is, if they forced him. There's some rumors swirling about his buyout. I mean, just because of the nature of the show and where we grew up, like I just know a lot of Penn State fans. And so I've been getting like information here and there where it's saying things like, all right, Penn State might have worked on this deal for a couple weeks now. And so in regards to that, I'm not 100% sure how that would have affected his buyout or whatever, if that makes sense. Because like if they worked on the deal for, I don't know, let's say 3 weeks, he gets fired or pushed out or whatever. And then how is he supposed to go from that aspect into them finding like a new coach that fast? Like they have to have a backup plan. Do you agree?
I 100% agree. And I feel like you don't make a move like that unless you're 99.9% sure you have the guy
and
that you want.
It's only what, week 6? Just finished up? And one of the things I've heard is that as they were planning this out, that they were trying to do this last year as like a mutual split. And then the way the Penn State season went, where they made the playoffs and they made a run, that he kind of had to come back because, as we've talked about on the show, he's following the Big Ten blueprint, where you have a team that pretty much returns everybody and returns the most in the country. You're the favorite. They started the season ranked number 2, right? Only one of the top teams with a returning quarterback, and you're thinking national championship. I don't know how much of that I buy, because of course it's a Penn State source coming to me and saying, hey, there's been some like anger with James Franklin and the board or whatever, board of trustees. So they've been trying to look for a split for a while now, and they wanted to give him one last chance. And it's like, okay, that kind of makes sense, but he's not going to just step down randomly. His buyout was insane, and they had just increased it, I thought, because he was rumored in some of those other coaching openings a few years ago. Remember, wasn't he named in like when Florida State, I mean, that was a long time ago, but he was mentioned in like Florida State. Then USC was supposedly interested when they hired Lincoln Riley. I don't remember how many years ago that was. So like those drove up his value. I don't think the last round he was really mentioned much. That would have been the Alabama opening, right?
Right.
So some teams that I've been hearing, I mean, honestly, every team should be interested in him. He might have something to prove. And even in the past, I've seen different timelines where they're like, in the past 3 years, James Franklin's like one of the top winningest coaches. In the past 5 years, he's one of the winningest coaches. Yeah, he is. And honestly, he's been able to beat the teams that he's supposed to beat. This is the first year he's really lost as an underdog, except for maybe that Pitt game. The year that caused them to miss the playoffs, right? The year they won the Big Ten. They'd only lost to Michigan and Pitt. The Michigan game, they weren't close to winning. But that Pitt game, if he would have won that game, they would have been in the playoffs, and now we might have a different picture of him because they might have been able to parlay that success. We went through the recruiting rankings last week on the show, so I'm not going to go back through them, but I'm pretty sure he had like a number 3 class. He's ranked recruiting in like the top 10 range. You can't. It's hard to value because back in the pre-NIL cycle, if you had a lot of seniors returning, your classes kind of ebbed and flowed. There were only a couple of teams that were bringing in top classes every year and processing a ton of people out. Penn State and Franklin, they weren't really that type of program. I mean, he honored his word, and I think that's why he recruited so well. And that's why whenever he was fired, you saw a lot of top players decommit. Sometimes there's already kind of a backdoor type deal with the player where you don't really see them decommit right away like that. So to me, that was shocking because the player probably thought, well, my relationship's with him, let's see where he goes, right? As part of the buyout, they're saying that he has to look for another job. He doesn't have to try. He could do like the Step Brothers where he's just like showing up and goofing off and bringing someone with him to the interview like Jim Harbaugh did with the Vikings. Like, hey, this is my DC. It's like, why are you bringing him? What are you doing? What is this? We're interviewing you, dude. Like, James Franklin could pull the same kind of thing. And then Penn State, I think, would just have to keep paying him. I'm thinking that he's going to be hyper competitive, though, and try to find another job to be successful in. Do you agree?
I would say yes, but there's also part of me that thinks, is a break going to be good for him? Where you're in a high pressure, high stress situation, and do you want to just be able to take a little bit of a break?
Well, honestly, he can take a break right now, kind of recoup, have his kind of time to pick around. I mean, the program that I keep hearing pop up down here in the South is Florida. And it makes a lot of sense because with Napier, they struggle, they play lights out, they have the easy recruiting. If Franklin comes in and he takes Penn State recruiting to Florida, he's going to reach urban levels. Honestly. I mean, Penn State recruits itself, but not to the level of like what Franklin could have done in the Big Ten at Ohio State or Michigan. Like really, they're still a little, even with Jim Harbaugh not recruiting well near the end, I think I saw someone posted the average where Franklin was still behind him. So for everyone saying like, how can you get rid of Franklin? He's an ace recruiter. He could do better, right? There are guys that are beating him. And I think that like, if he's in a better program, like if you have that thing as a recruiting guy, not really an X and O's guy, you bring in Jim Knowles, they pay for him. He thinks it's the key piece. I don't know what was going on with that. I didn't like that move to begin with because Jim Knowles never beat Michigan. And I mean, honestly, dude, you're laughing, but I still remember that one game. It was 2022. They lost to him like 2 or 3 years in a row. I mean, last year, Michigan didn't even have a quarterback. And I mean, their offense didn't score. But that one year, it was like Michigan put 42 on them or whatever. That year, Don ran those long runs. If you go back and watch that highlight, I've seen it millions of times now, popping up on my Twitter feed. I think it's Joel Klatt or Gus. One of them says like, this is why they brought in Jim Knowles. He's going to get a stop right here. And then next thing you know, Donovan Edwards breaking a 90-yard touchdown run or whatever it was, and the game's over. And that's like the definitive moment. If I was on the hiring board at Penn State, I would have just brought that clip with me and said, hey, what happened here? Like, Harbaugh is so conservative, he's running the ball. How are you letting him run for 2 80-yard touchdown runs? What's wrong with you? Penn State hypes him up, makes him the highest paid coordinator, I think. And honestly, it could have worked out. I know Penn State lost a couple D players that were key. But like I said at the beginning, because I get a lot of Penn State guys reaching out to me telling me the team wasn't as good as what you've been saying. Blah, blah, blah. You're really hyping us up. You're jinxing us. Penn State had the highest number of players coming back that I have seen. I mean, the numbers could be incorrect, but they had the top returning guys out of any program. They might have lost a couple studs, but your job as a coach is to fill those holes, and you have to think that if they bring back their running backs, they bring back their quarterback, everyone kind of knows the system now. They bring in a better D coordinator, what they say. They're upgrading. He just won a national championship. They should be competing. And it's not like they were losing. It's not like they went through the year and the season's over and they lost to Ohio State again and Oregon or something. No, they lost to UCLA and Northwestern. I saw a funny stat that said like Lovie Smith fired after losing to Northwestern. Scott Frost fired after losing to Northwestern. James Franklin fired after losing to Northwestern. So maybe that's like the barometer in the Big Ten. You losing to Northwestern, you gone, James. Big game James. That's the thing. If he goes to a place like Florida and he recruits just a little bit better, he was a play away from the national championship last year against an Ohio State team that he always plays tough. He's bound to get lucky again. They could have beat him in the national championship. I know a lot of Penn State fans say, like, we would have been killed in the national championship. When has Ohio State ever killed you? Right? I can't remember a time. Even through their good years, they always tense up, and all they have to do is just wait. Like Penn State last year could have beat them in the regular season. They just had the goal line stand. That was it. In the playoffs, maybe they make the goal line stand. I don't know. Maybe they score. You can't say they would have been killed because, to my knowledge, maybe I'm wrong. Someone will throw me some stat up. Ohio State has never really killed Penn State. They've always been close. And all you need to do is make it to the game, one play away from the national championship game. And 6 games later, he's fired. Crazy. Do you think this affects coaches going forward, Matt? In terms of, I don't want to say buyouts, but in terms of how quickly or how many years they get to build a program?
I would say yes. I mean, I feel like more recently you're seeing, like, look at how fast UCLA pulled the plug on their coach. And all things considered, they weren't really, I don't feel like anyone was really riding high on them and after the first week or two. I mean, they pulled the transfer from Tennessee, but to me, that was one of those, like, they really broke the bank for one player. And I don't think that they had the supporting cast around, or at least it didn't appear that way. You know, after upsetting Penn State now, they've kind of taken another direction. You know, they started putting it together, but, you know, initially it was like, I don't know, like, what other pieces you have around that you're building on, unless you're banking on just riding that wave of notoriety and trying to parlay that into something bigger.
Do you think it's due to that new Hazel kid?
I don't know. I mean, there's something to be said about it.
Well, they beat Michigan State, and it's funny that you brought them up because, I mean, you saw people saying that, like, Florida State had a coach potentially interview out there. We talked about it on the show that possibly they were trying to set something up with Michigan State's coaching staff, and both teams since that weekend have been playing awful. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I saw some speculative reports that were saying that they feel like Coach White has either interviewed or accepted the job, and, like, they don't want to make it public till the end of the year. But I mean, it matches up perfectly because the first couple weeks they played so well, and then it's just like the bottoms dropped out. And I keep looking at all these stats offensively, and you know, I just think that there's some irony to it because their offense is averaging like 500 yards a game of offense, and they're one of the top offenses in the country. But they're also giving up over the last 3 weeks 40, 50 points. So, like, they're just constantly in these shootouts where they have to try to dig themselves out of a hole.
And see, that's where that same Michigan State week where they had been rumored to go out there for the USC game, they lose, and then they actually got killed by UCLA last week. I think it was at home. And so you're looking at another situation where if Smith doesn't turn it around, he might get fired. Right? I don't know how how like many chances he's going to get at Michigan State. If you lose a team like Franklin did, you're gone. Because look at how UCLA fired their coach in the middle of the year, and then they instantly turned it around because the players started to work. Well, I mean, honestly, players started to work hard again. I've been part of it. Coaching change, different things. Some players don't like it. Some players do like it. He brings in his own guys. I mean, you're in the middle of the year, so you really can't bring in your own guys. But you're promoting coaches that the players are fond of. It doesn't always work out. And that's why I think you see coaches that kind of get named as interim or like they take over for somebody. It stays high for like a year or two, and then it just starts going downhill. And that's where you have to make that decision of, okay, where are you going to go with this? You're going to fire him, bring in someone else, and hope that you start it all over again? Otherwise, like, you don't know. Like, how many years are you going to give a guy? The Dabo Sweeneys and the Jim Harbaughs, the guys that were there for like 7 years before they won a national championship, I think it's going to be pretty far and few in between. I mean, I guess Ryan Day was there how many years? He had to be close to 7, right? I don't remember when Urban had his scandal, but I know he had lost. I think he was at least 1 of 4 plus a COVID year against Michigan, so that's 5 years at least, right? And so I think it's going to be tough to pull that off. Historically, in the BCS era, you either won the national championship within 3 years or you never did. Once you got the first one, then you had the bump, right? The recruiting bump.
But I almost feel like your NCAA now is following the very similar model of the NFL, where it's like if you're not winning almost instantly, like there's no room for buffer. And I feel like colleges now are finding themselves in this spot where they feel that pressure of needing to compete right away. And with NIL, I feel like there's a lot of programs across NCAA that are in a spot where they don't have the financial backing to be able to go in and say, we need to spend X amount of money for players. And smaller schools, I feel even worse for at this point, because the harder thing is even to recruit a top class, there's nothing keeping them there past that year. So it's like go to a school and I'll use like a Louisville, for example. Go to Boston College, go to Rutgers for a year and play against these teams. And then what's to stop you in a year from transferring out to the Big Ten or the SEC and trying to double, triple your value, knowing full well that those other schools aren't going to pay that type of money to keep you on the roster.
And see, that's where right now I think you're looking at kind of that accelerated timeline, but the difference is it's always been like 3 years for a top program. Look at LSU with Orgeron. Even if you win the national championship, they can get rid of you. I think that's why Franklin's buyout's so high, because Coach O wins the national championship and they still get rid of him. The difference with NIL now is you're seeing lower programs. Like, no, I'm not saying like, oh, these programs stink. Like programs that haven't, like not the blue bloods, like UCLA, where they hope to compete. And if they're not getting results, they're firing their guys in the middle of the year. And I don't remember that ever happening like 20 years ago. At least to the level where we have, 6 coaches being fired already? 7, 8?
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. There's only 100-something teams. So you have like almost 10%. I guess it would be less than that. Probably at least 5% of the coaches have been fired. So you have a system now where not only the blue bloods want to win right away, but any team needs to win anyway. And I think you can kind of look at it and blame it on a couple of coaches. Like I'll throw Signetti and just Michigan basketball Dusty May in as an example. So like you can take over a program or a team that even though they're supposed to be like historically maybe good, Like Dusty May took over Juwan Howard. I think Michigan had won like 7 or 9 games. With the portal now, you can go ahead and turn that around so fast and make the tournament. And then this year, and the reason I brought up because I think that the preseason rankings came out, and I want to say Michigan's ranked 7th. Going from 9 wins and not making the tournament to being ranked in the top 10 in 2 years is insane. Like that. And now other programs are going to look at that and say, hey, we're Maryland. We're used to being pretty good. Why are we not ranked at all? Right? Like, why are we having trouble? And this team can just hire some guy and be in the top 10. And I think now we're seeing it with football with Cignetti, same thing. Year 2, in the top 10, beating top 10 teams at home, or I mean on the road, actually, because it was at Oregon, I think, right? So you're beating top 10 teams. Some programs don't even have a top 10 win like ever, right? That's why I think the Sharon Moore thing, he got a longer leash because he won at Ohio Stadium. Only Michigan and Oregon have won at Ohio Stadium in the past like 10 years, really. And what, Oklahoma with Baker? When they did the 2 flag incidents every time they lose at home. No wonder they wanted to put that law into place not to plant flags. I think now you're really screwing programs like Nebraska and Penn State because they haven't been at the top. They expect to win, and Indiana's kicking in teeth. Right? They crushed Illinois. They beat Oregon by 10. When's the last time Penn State beat a top 10 team even? Let alone by double digits. I think it was a 10-point win. Haven't. Like, they haven't done it. So that's where I think the expectation comes in with this. And now, in reality, let's go through their options here. Personally, I think there's only one name on the list that they have to go for. I think they have to go for Cignetti. He's a Pennsylvania guy. To me, he's the only guy that moves the needle. You fired your coach that had the team ranked number 2 and that were in the semifinals last year. You fired him. You have to hire a coach that can top that. I know Cignetti doesn't really have the D1 records right now, but he's been in Indiana for 2 years. They have like as many top 10 wins as what Penn State had under Franklin's entire time. He beat Illinois and Oregon this year. Both were in the top 10, and he crushed Illinois that they almost fell out of the rankings. That's how bad. And then Illinois bounced back and beat USC, and USC might be good. Like, we don't know how good these other teams are until the end of the year, so it's hard to judge this and see, like, if Indiana's undefeated and they win the Big Ten, then yeah, Penn State better be on the phone to him. That would be my top pick. Who would be your top pick for Penn State right now?
I mean, Cignetti, I think would be a good match. I don't know, because I feel like every time this year, I look at teams that are firing people, and like one of the names that I like is Kenny Dillingham, but from Arizona State. Like, I feel like he's building their program up really well right now, but I just don't know if he would, like, I think he's from Arizona. So, like, I don't think that would be help. Like, similarly, with all the speculation that Norvell's going to get fired, it's like, who do you want to have? I mean, honestly, I would say probably Diaz would probably be one that would fit the bill.
For Penn State or Florida State? Now you're throwing me off.
For Penn State. I mean, with the Florida State situation, I would very much rather them just keep their coach, let them get the defense under control, and I feel like there's more continuity there in the program.
Bro, they could just grab James Franklin at Florida State. He won like 10 games every year. Florida State's losing 10 games, dude. I'm telling you, that would be an upgrade for almost every program out there.
I would. The only scenario where I would take him is if they kept Malzahn as the OC and just said, do not touch anything with the offense.
Well, that's what he needs. I mean, dude, Gene Chizik won a national championship. All you need to do is just be the recruiting head guy. I've said it before with Harbaugh and his conservative meddling, right? Like, stop doing it. Just let the coordinators come in and take over, and you have to trust them. And if you're able to make good coordinator hires, which honestly Franklin's been able to do, you don't win 10 games every year without making good hires. Is he make idiotic decisions in the middle of a game? Of course he does. That's why it's hilarious to watch, right? Like, how is he going to blow this up? You're going to let them get the ball back against UCLA? Like, what are you doing? You're going to run a draw? They ran that stupid draw quarterback read play against Ohio State that year when they needed to play. Then they ran it against UCLA. Like, Franklin had to have been phoning that in, right? You don't call that same play twice by coincidence in key moments. Like, you just don't. Like, that's him. That would be the thing where I would just, like, when I'm interviewing him, just show that play, the Ohio State one, and then the UCLA one back to back, and say, like, if you come here, you can't do that. Like, you have to just take your headset off and you have to walk to the far back corner of the field, and we'll give you like a Papa John's pizza like Urban Meyer on the truck, and you can just eat a piece, like, looking sad if it doesn't work out. But you're not having a hand in the play, right? Just go stand down there in the corner. Because honestly, and I'm not even joking here, the other options, if Penn State's swinging for the fences, I don't want to hear Matt Rule. I don't know if we were talking to him, if we talked about him on this show or before the show. But the 80's close with Matt Rule. He's worse than James Franklin. Hasn't beat Ohio State or Michigan that I can remember. Why would you take a guy that can't even win 10 games or even like make a good bowl and have him replace a guy that is winning every year? You might as well just stick with the status quo at that point. If he hires Matt Rule, it might work out, but I saw something where he's only ever won 2 ranked games, and they were both when he was like at Temple. It was like Memphis and someone else. He's been in Nebraska for like how many years? 5 years? How does he not have 1 ranked win at all? Like, Illinois and Indiana are ranked. You can't beat one of them. Iowa's usually ranked. I think Minnesota was ranked there for a while. You can't beat one team? Get out of here. That's what they want to hire? Matt Diaz, or Diaz. Manny. I almost said Matt. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I have Matt Rule on the brain. Wasn't he at Florida or Miami? Got canned?
Yeah.
If you can't win at Miami, you're not winning at Penn State. That's all I would just read on the resume. Like, I don't care what he's doing at Duke. He's not obviously good enough at Duke for us to like know that Duke's like ranked in top 10 or something. Then you're not going to be. I mean, Texas A&M, they fired their coach with a huge buyout to get someone from Duke. Has it worked out? Not really. Right? Not really at all. Maybe they could pull it off this year. I know they beat Notre Dame, but who knows? The only other splash coaches I can think of right now that you would be able to contact would have been who? And don't laugh because I'm not bringing this up. Urban, Gruden, right? Who else is out there that would be a splash hire to come in and win right away? Those are the only other 2 I could think of, and I haven't heard either of them named for the job yet. I don't think.
Looking at this, understanding what they want, Rule of all of them, Rule makes sense, unless they go like something really crazy and try to bring back Bill O'Brien.
Bill O'Brien hated it there. That's why he left. He said about the Paterno cult. I mean, where's he coaching now? Nowhere?
No, he's at Boston College.
Is he the head coach?
Yeah.
They haven't even been that good, though. I couldn't even remember who their coach was. Did they beat you guys?
We haven't played him yet.
Who did they beat? I thought they had a big win this year.
Oh no, wait. I thought they did beat him because that was Castellano. No,
I don't know now. My other monitor turned off, so I can't check it. I don't know what the hell's going on with it. I don't know. Maybe they beat Clemson or something. And then who cares, right? Because that's the thing. Right now, we talked about coaches on the leash. Dabo is the next one because he's there living off his 2 national championships. He has not embraced the portal. Like, give credit to James Franklin. We've made fun of him plenty of times on the show. That's just the case of being like a Big Ten fan, right? And watching him make mistakes. Like, he's a great coach, though. Looking at with Dabo, on the other hand, Franklin's bringing in guys from the transfer portal. He's recruiting well. Dabo's recruiting has kind of fallen off, but I mean, it's still around Penn State levels anyway. So what's the difference? So Penn State could compete, but Dabo hasn't been bringing in transfers, and his team fell apart. So if you're able to fire Franklin, Clemson's season is just as bad. They're ranked as high as Penn State. So maybe there is something to him wanting to get out of Penn State, and they worked on a mutual buyout. I just don't see, there's not as many landing spots that would have been soft as there were a couple years ago when you had Florida State and USC potential as available. And so where would Franklin go now? You have Arkansas is open, maybe Oklahoma State, maybe. Those are kind of steps down that are fairly far. Oklahoma State honestly wouldn't be too bad. They don't have the booster support, I don't think, anymore, though, right? So what are you going to do? I mean, Miami would have been key. I really think it's just going to come down to Florida unless he goes somewhere like Virginia Tech. And if he goes to Virginia Tech and turns them around, I mean, that could make him a legend almost immediately. You're close enough to the recruiting grounds. You move to an easier conference. And he's known for winning games he's supposed to win. So Virginia Tech gets favored a lot just based on their recruiting strength. If you bring in a guy that's a better recruiter, look out. I don't know how they would compete in the playoffs, right? Because it's hard to out-talent like in Alabama or whatever, but he's already losing to that game anyway at Penn State most of the time. But you don't know. Like last year, it lined up where they won almost made it to the national championship playing lower seeds. Like even Notre Dame wasn't a top team. They knocked out Georgia. Penn State had basically everything served up to them. Even Ohio State wasn't a top seed. They had upset Oregon. So Penn State, that was their chance to like, hey, here's an easy slew of, if you look back at the seeding, they played like what? Boise or SMU? I don't even know who Penn State played each round. And then Notre Dame, like those weren't top seeds. That was the year. He could do the same thing at Virginia Tech, though. Luck into a couple easy seeds and then see where it takes them. I would have said like Tennessee before they had success. That would have been one where they would love to just have 10-win seasons at Tennessee. They'd probably build a statue to him. Franklin, right? I mean, if they might not be beating Alabama, but if you're winning 10, 11 games and making the playoffs every year, I think a lot of teams are just going to be happy. And that's what I think right now with Florida. If you can start, cause I just wonder what happens with Franklin if he's able to have a team where he might have higher talent than his rivals. I mean, Miami and Florida State are both going to be tough to out-recruit. But with NIL and being in the SEC, you never know the way things are now. He could just be out-recruiting everybody and winning those games, and then it's an afterthought. Where's the booster support going to come from? A&M? I don't think they're going to get rid of their guy now. But I still think Penn State has to make a splash hire. If they hire anybody else, you're kind of just going to be shaking your head. It worked out for Georgia, though. I was kind of in the same thing. I think maybe, I don't remember when it happened if we were doing this show, but when they got rid of Rick, I thought, you don't get rid of a guy that's winning all the time and then just losing the top game, right? You hope that you get a guy that goes to the top. That's only one like case that I can think of where that really worked. Other than like an old coach like Bobby Bowden or Joe Paterno kind of just finally stepping down, and then you get some youth in there to kind of just spark things up. There's not really been a guy that just keeps winning and then they step down. Like even Bill Snyder, I he stepped down, then he came back, and he brought him back because of how bad they got. It's just going to be a tough follow, I think. But don't be surprised if they swing the fences, man. You don't throw around.
One of the funnier names that I saw was Sonny Dykes. They said he's just too nice of a person. He can't win the national championship because he's not a jerk.
Who, Sonny Dykes?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, he's been crying about the sign stealing thing for 3 years now. After that Georgia whooping, he'd probably fit in there at Penn State. Already has the hating Michigan thing down, whining. I could see that working out. He's one of the coaches that annoys me. I wouldn't say that he's too nice. Any guy that's just whining and making excuses and then lays an egg like that in the national championship, get out of here. I think that's his peak. He's not even winning at TCU now, is he? No. It's Texas Tech, bro.
Yeah, it's Texas Tech blowing money now.
Yeah, I've been saying Texas Tech, they paid for almost a softball national championship. They're going to get their football national championship. And then Phil Knight's going to just explode. Right? He's been trying to pay for an Oregon national championship for like 20 years now. They've been close, but then they lose to Indiana. Can you imagine? He's probably sitting at home thinking like, all right, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. It's probably going to be Penn State this year. Then Penn State chokes, and he's like, oh my gosh, this is a year every team is losing. This is our year. There's no like top team. Oregon's finally going to win the national championship, and then Indiana swoops in. And if Indiana wins the national championship, you know how funny that would be? Because if you remember a certain coach named Rich Rodriguez, big money swooped in and pretty much cost West Virginia a chance at continuing their dynasty and probably a national championship, right? Now, the Pitt game, you can blame it on Pat McAfee. He's on TV all the time now. He's annoying, so he can probably take it, right? That if he would have hit those field goals, that West Virginia would have played for the national championship, Rich Rod wouldn't have left, and then maybe he would have had a dynasty there. That's where Cignetti's at right now. Where if he lets his Penn State hype derail his season, how would that look? And what's the timeline going to be if he leaves? Indiana's most likely in the playoffs. Unless he just interviews for Penn State right now and then tanks. Right? I don't think you do that after beating Oregon. Indiana's also been throwing a lot of money around, and I've heard that they're in the top 10 in NIL spending right now. So he would have to wait till at least the playoffs. If they keep winning, do you think Penn State would wait?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I just feel like everybody's in just win right now mode that I think admin just caves to what the mob wants. And there's reason that teams like the Bengals and Browns are turning over coaches every 3 years because they're so desperate to win that they're willing to just reset.
But he's old. He's won everywhere. This is your chance to kind of reset before bringing in someone new. You go for the national championship right now. Because I'm going to throw in a little controversy here. If the timing doesn't work for Penn State, the Cignetti timing could work for Michigan. And I'm not saying that I've heard things on the Michigan side of things. But you have Bryce Underwood, a stud quarterback. Michigan hasn't been prepared for the Oklahoma and USC game. I know they were both on the road. Michigan now has to win out to make the playoffs. If they lose to Washington on Saturday and you're looking at another 7-win, 6-win season and things start to fall apart. And Cignetti, even if he wins the national championship at Indiana, you could just sit on Sharon Moore and secretly work on a deal and bring in Cignetti to come over. He fills in any gaps. Plus, you already have the great recruiting that Michigan's been doing. I think Michigan's recruiting class was like 6 right now. And then that would be the coup where you look at it and say, Cignetti's old. He only has 4 or 5 years. We have Bryce Underwood for 2 more years if we have this locked in. Let's see if Cignetti can reproduce it. Or if they fall short this year, I think that is an even easier sell for Michigan, where it's like, look, we just won the national championship. We have the number 1 quarterback recruit. We'll come in. You don't have to portal in, because Indiana's been portaling in quarterbacks. That's why I think a lot of Clemson fans on here, I was sending you Clemson memes, dude, where it's like they're talking about bringing in Mike Gundy and James Franklin on their staff down here, which I don't even know what Franklin's good at. Why would you bring him in? To help recruit? The transfer portal? Could you imagine if Penn State got out of the buyout because he took an assistant job at Clemson? That would be embarrassing for James Franklin. I'd probably have to boo him if he came into Raleigh. James, what are you thinking, bro? Take your $50 million. You could have been on TV instead. Because there's one name I didn't even bring up, dude, that I've heard. Of course, Penn State sources, so don't believe it. They're going to try to get Nick Saban. Do you think they could pull it off?
I would say not.
Why? They already have one legendary coach. He followed a legendary coach, Bear Bryant at Alabama. Joe Paterno won 2 national championships, right? If Nick Saban could come there and win 3, I think he has more than Bear Bryant, right? That would solidify him as the greatest coach of all time, I think. Because I've been skeptical because of his records and not winning in the NFL and things. But that would be 3 teams. He would have LSU, Alabama, and then Penn State. Even if he just won 1, I think you'd have to give it to him at that point. And there's rumors that he wants to come back into coaching. He doesn't really want to do the NIL thing. Penn State has enough boosters where they're landing the number 1 recruit in hockey, and they're trying to build up these other sports. They have the recruiting system in place at the university where Nick Saban might not have to do that type of stuff, right? They're the premier program on the whole Northeast side of things, New England side. It's all Penn State. I mean, you can get guys that are stolen from Ohio State and Michigan or Notre Dame. And then some teams from the South, like Georgia's been going into Philly pretty successfully. And then Philly drafts them back with the Eagles, right? Like a weird thing they have going on there. Must just be the city, right? Don't go east. I think that could be enticing for him. Because the other option for Saban, because he's already how old? He's older than Cignetti, I think. Isn't he like 70?
I believe so.
It would be Texas, right? Sark was choking. They beat Oklahoma. And now you have a situation where maybe Saban could come in there, but there's not too many blue bloods that are opening up, right? It's Penn State right now. I don't think USC makes a coaching move. I really don't think Texas or Oklahoma is going to make a move. They're both like near the top 10 right now. I don't think.
Here's a wild one. What about Dabo out of Penn State?
He wouldn't leave up there, right?
Just throw a pile of money. It's like, we're going to have someone else manage it. You don't have to worry about getting players. We'll actually do the portal for you.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying for Saban. So you're taking my argument and raising me a Dabo, which could work.
I mean, I feel like with Saban, I think his age is a factor. That's why, like, Cignetti's winning, but they're also knocking him for his age. That is it going to work?
Yeah, but Signetti at Penn State?
Yeah,
That's why I don't think it would work at Michigan, because like they were backdooring Rodriguez, and now I feel like they're backdooring Sharon Moore, from what I've heard, where they're like trying to heavy hand him on like Wink Martindale and some things that I don't believe in. Like, I'm a guy where if you're going to be there, support the coach, give him what he wants. Don't be trying to finagle things and get things taken care of by making demands. It's not going to work out. And so Signetti, dude, didn't he write like attack on his hand before the game? Did you see that?
I think
He wrote like attack. And then he said at that interview, when they asked about him, he said, "Google me, I win." That's something I would say, dude. So needless to say, I'm a fan, right? You know I am. So if he were to go to Penn State, I would kind of be depressed. Because it's not that I don't want my Penn State friends to have a little bit of success enjoying their lives. It's just that he might win too much there. And I don't need another Ohio State program where it gets elevated by this crazy guy that likes winning. That's why I'm trying to work on a plan to get him to Michigan. Right? Because otherwise, dude, if he goes to Penn State, I'm going to have to start contacting John Harbaugh to see if he's ready to leave the Ravens and come to Michigan. I'll be out of options. Who else am I going to call? Saban? I don't think it's going to work for me. I can't have Ryan Day and Signetti at the two biggest in-conference rivals, right? I mean, no offense, Michigan State, but you're not on that level. The trifecta of evil would be if Penn State hires Signetti and then Michigan State brings in Urban Meyer. That would just be, I would have to just stop watching sports, I think. Right? I don't know if I could take that. 3 dudes that would just hate Michigan at once. I don't think Signetti hates Michigan. So I could give him a pass, but I think he likes winning enough that he would make it personal. And honestly, it might work out if he attacks Ohio State, because he knows like he could get under their skin. Because he said something about them, like he didn't try to ruffle their feathers after the game. He said something like, well, Ohio State's undefeated. So like he's humble enough to know, don't poke the bear. But if he's at Penn State and he's beating them, and they're like, Penn State's like ranked number 1, that's going to be a system shock. Because right now, let's be real, the SEC teams haven't been able to keep up. Even with the money, it's splitting it up. I tried to send you a graphic. I don't know. I don't think you got it. I don't think it went through. But the scoring margin in SEC games is down to 10 points a game. It's been going down from like 20 points a game in the past 5-10 years. So what I'm talking about is the average margin of victory, because they had teams that were so bad, like Vanderbilt and like Mississippi State before Mike Leach, that in 2018, the average margin of victory was 17.5 points a game. Most SEC games were not competitive. You had such a high gap between like the Georgias and Bamas that was it. It went up to 18 in 2020 when Georgia was like at its top peak, and then in Bama were just killing everybody. Now it's down to 10.7. Because when the SEC, before when they would talk about like, oh, you have to keep the players in the South, they really were just consolidating on Georgia and Alabama's rosters, really. And now Texas, and now with NIL and the portal, you have Vanderbilt competing. You have South Carolina competing. And even if they don't have a good year, they're still taking enough top players now that the depth is affected. And so you're looking at the margin of victory, and it's going down, down, down. Meanwhile, in the Big Ten, they're able to use that portal to build depth. And so now their top teams are where before the Big Ten was a bunch of like mediocre top teams. They didn't have any excellent teams. Ohio State had a ton of talent. They weren't really developed. Urban Meyer kind of brought them to development, but they still choked and got blown out by Purdue and Iowa every once in a while. And it was kind of like a head scratcher, right? Where it wasn't like they were getting upset on like a last minute field goal. They're getting killed by like 40 points. And it doesn't make any sense because they weren't at the level of talent that those other SEC ones had because of development. I'm not saying because of recruiting rankings, because you can see that they were one of the top every year with Urban there. But the development, something was off. Now, with portal and everything, Ohio State's sitting pretty. I mean, just in terms of talent and even their top talent with like their receivers and stuff, they've always been good. They haven't had running backs to match. When you can get the top guy, one of the top running backs from the SEC to just come in and be your backup running back, like that's a big thing. That's huge. And then they bring in like Alabama's best guy, Caleb Downs, and they're like, all right, you're going to be on our team now. That would never have happened before the portal. So the Big Ten has a distinct advantage where if Penn State can just go in and do the same thing that everybody else is doing, because Michigan took Bama's best running back, Ohio State took their best safety. Like there's a big reason why Bama's beatable and why Florida State's beating them by what? They beat them by 17 or something like that? 14 at least?
Yeah.
You don't have the top talent anymore. You're losing it in the portal. So what are you looking at to do, Penn State? You have to bring in a coach that can take advantage. You have the resources. You have the donors ready to build something. They're reaching like Phil Knight levels where they want to win so bad at Penn State that the donors are ready to throw the money to fire a coach that has one of the most ridiculous buyouts of all time in the middle of the year. They didn't even give him time to redeem himself because they know there's a good chance he wins 10 games. They go 10-3, Matt. Right? That was a realistic scenario. Heck, they could have went 10-4, lose to Ohio State, win their bowl game against Missouri or whatever again. And then it's like, oh, boom, there we go. 10 wins. James Franklin, 10 spot. And meanwhile, Florida's like, why can't we get 10 wins? Or even Auburn. Like, there are some teams that would kill to win 10 games a year. And so, I don't know. I throw out like the crazy things like Gruden. Gruden's not going to get a look in the NFL with that lawsuit. So if he's realistic about wanting to coach again, and maybe he's not, he likes his TV thing, a job at Penn State wouldn't be bad. You can delegate. You can just be the face for the portal and the transfer, and you can bring in some NFL guys. We've seen success with that happening. Heck, even Herm Edwards brought in NFL guys at Arizona State and got that rolling. And then they attacked him just like they attacked Harbaugh, saying like impermissible benefits, whatever, pushed him out. But guess what? He already got the structure in place. They're still winning. Gruden could do the same thing. Just come in. He's in Penn State. They wouldn't care about his past, right there in the middle of nowhere. They're like 10 years behind up there. So you're just hanging out. Gruden's like flying around, eating his ice cream that they name after him, doing whatever he wants to do, and bringing in studs, NFL connections. They can get something rolling up there. And that's what I don't want to happen. So here's a thing that maybe they'll just bring in Matt Rule. Everyone will kind of know their place. I mean, Matt Rule likes blaming people in the interviews and stuff, so he's kind of like your boy Sonny Dykes, whining, making excuses. Hey, we don't know why Georgia crushed us. Hey, we were close. Did you see the turnover margin? It's almost at Scott Frost levels of, hey, we out-hit that team today. Did you see that? But Scott Frost has a national championship, and those other two guys don't.
He does.
Who else did I bring up? They could bring Belichick in, dude. That might be the one thing that scares them away from Gruden. Although, would Gruden have a young girlfriend that distracts the entire team?
No, he has a wife.
Yeah, he might not be able to pull that off. UNC. Remember last week there were people talking that he was going to be fired on Friday, and instead it was James Franklin who would have had that on their bingo card. Imagine the payout of that bet if you would have bet that Franklin got fired before Bill Belichick, dude. Everyone would have called you crazy. You would have become an instant millionaire.
Yeah.
Because people were ready for Belichick to be fired, and then they gave him the vote of confidence, the dreaded vote of confidence, because you know that's not going to work out. But that goes back to he didn't even have half a year, and they're already bailing on him. He might not even get 2 years, let alone 3. So that's where Michigan's at. That's the only team that would compete, I think, on Penn State's level in terms of a coaching hire if they make a move. I don't know what other teams are going to fire their coach, right? I don't think like Ryan Day or someone goes to the NFL either. I don't think they want him. like Sarkisian, they're not going to bring him back to the NFL. If Texas tanks, would they fire him to let Nick Saban coach Arch? I don't know. Would he want to coach Arch? That'd be weird.
That's a good question.
Because I watched Arch play, and his fundamentals haven't improved. It's the same with Alar, where at some point you have to have your quarterback improve. That's why I'm getting worried with Underwood. Because if you're not throwing the ball in the middle of the field and you're just throwing dinks and dunk screens, you're turning into Penn State's QB development, which hasn't been good. They had one guy break the mold, Clifford, that was able to live outside that and be successful and make an NFL roster, and he's been like a backup. He hasn't broke through yet. But they had high-level recruits, Alar, Hackenberg. I know that was like Bill O'Brien, I think, ruined Hackenberg maybe. But maybe it was Franklin when he got there. I can't remember the timeline. But they've had top quarterbacks, and they haven't developed them. But if you're able to go to a team where maybe, like Florida, don't they already have a quarterback that's ready to go? Langley? Is that who their quarterback is?
DJ Lagway.
Yeah, Lagway. So he's going to go ahead and be a bright spot if they are going to make a coaching move. Because I really think Florida would be the next one, other than maybe Auburn. But Auburn got ripped off in that game. Did you see that game?
No.
They had a touchdown. The quarterback went in, and remember, all the ball has to do is touch the line, right? If on the replay, you can see that the ball touches the line. He's halfway over the line, and the Georgia guy rips it out. That's it. Play's over. They gave Georgia the fumble. They actually were so confused that they marked him down and gave Georgia the ball back at the end zone. The player actually picked it up and ran, I think. I don't know if he ran all the way for a touchdown or they caught up to him because he was confused. They never blew the whistle. So it was like a cluster where the refs on the field knew that it was a fumble. They said it was a fumble. They didn't let him really play it out. I don't remember what happened. And then everyone was focused on the replay, where on the replay, it was pretty cut and dry. Where ball's across the line. As soon as it hits the line, touchdown. He had two hands on it. He was not fumbling it. He didn't fumble it until the other guy put his hand in there. And then it swung the game. Auburn was about to go up 17-0. They lost 20-10. They score on that touchdown. Georgia's defeated. That's it. They're not coming back. They barely came back and got 20 as it was because Auburn started to press when they didn't have to. And that's like the second time Auburn's been ripped off this year, which is the one thing that's scaring me with this Big Ten business thing that they're trying to do. Finally, USC and Michigan spoke up against it. I talked about it last week. Basically, some more details came out. They want to have a Big Ten enterprise where every team and then private equity comes in. They give them a loan up front. And then they're locked in to a rights deal, kind of like the grant of rights that the ACC has with ESPN, for like 20 years, where this enterprise, but instead of it being like a TV network or someone, it's all 18 members plus 2 other votes, which would be whoever's funding it, right? And then maybe one other joint one. So you would have to have all the teams vote together. The only thing is, Michigan and Ohio State make all the money. So all the other teams are going to vote against those two and really start to do some really dumb things, right? Because if you enter this, every team is going to be into the agreement. So if the agreement says, hey, we sold our stadium name rights for XYZ, instead of like in baseball or football, like you have, Wrigley Field, Wrigley Gum, right? I don't think it's the gum factory anymore, but I'm pretty sure that's where the name originally came from, right? They bought the sponsorship, but then the other team has a different thing, like PNC Arena or Heinz Field. Whenever the sponsorship runs up, it becomes something else. Every team, I think, would have the same deal. So every Big Ten stadium would have the same Walmart patch or whatever they sell to on all the stadiums. which is just going to be insane. Because I've already talked about some of the ADs from the lower schools saying, like, we've been talking about doing this on our own, but like, we're not getting that much money offered to us. We realize that if we bring in Michigan and Ohio State, we're going to get all this other money. And credit to USC, they realized it too. And so they've been speaking out with Michigan saying, like, look, we're in LA. We're getting ripped off here. If we would just sell the rights ourselves, we would get big time TV money, right?
Yeah.
They're in like the second biggest city. Why are we splitting it with Nebraska because they're poor? Because that's what this comes down to. The other Big Ten schools want to get out from under their stadium projects. Penn State, they're doing a bunch of stadium projects. Michigan State is doing some. And so they want to get this funding to come in so that it doesn't come out of their TV deals, so that then they can pay for better rosters, which again hurts Michigan, Ohio State, USC again, because now you're letting a team like Indiana get a bunch of money off sponsorships, and then Signetti is going to have an influx of money to pay his players, and because they have the sponsorship deal they're paying off in 20 years or whatever it is, their loan, now their boosters are going to give more money, and they could have a mini dynasty, which is then going to hurt other schools. Where in the top, like, hey, we're the big earners. We have the biggest stadiums. Oh, wait, we're just going to give a cut of that to Indiana and make them into a mini dynasty when we're already fighting Oregon and Phil Knight. Right? And I don't know how old he is. He has to be old. But, like, once he's no longer here, are they going to fall off like Oklahoma State? Where you lose your number one NIL arm? Right? So, of course, they're in on the deal. So I don't see Oregon's flipping. Penn State, they're kind of leveraged, and they just fired their coach. Is this deal going to pay off their coach? They said the Adidas deal was. I don't know. So then it comes down to Ohio State. I don't know why they're not speaking up. What are they doing, right? They should be with Michigan and USC. And I hope some other teams start to speak up, because in reality, you're diluting your revenue 15 times. Like, USC and Ohio State are probably going to be comparative to what Michigan gets. Probably Penn State, maybe Nebraska, close-ish. Maybe Wisconsin, closest. Michigan State, closest because of basketball, kind of. But like Maryland, nah. Rutgers, nah. Indiana, Illinois, Northwestern, no. UCLA, no. I mean, they're in LA, but they're not getting any money. Even USC is a joke because their stadium, they called it a sellout against Michigan. They had huge blankets covering their end zone seats. You can tell there are seats under there, guys. We know it's not a sellout. What are you doing? How embarrassing is that for the Big Ten? So that's where I'm at with it. I'm very annoyed because it's going to hurt Michigan, and it feels like everyone's against us right now, where Michigan has like the least amount of penalties called against them, against opponents. Dead last. No holding, nothing. USC plays an ineligible player. Normally that's the rules to vacate a win, right? Oh, wait, this is a new gambling thing. Of course it's related to gambling. So it's not really ineligible. We're just going to fine them $5,000. Which, again, why are we bringing gambling in? Plus, I don't know if you've noticed. Do you see those ads about gambling?
Oh, yeah. They've increased quite a bit.
They're weird, though. The one I saw was like, don't threaten players because they made you lose your bet. It's like, okay, how about don't let us bet? Right? I'm going to send... If I bet... and a pro athlete and I call him a loser on like Twitter, okay. He's getting paid for that, dude. They're paying him NIL, right? I don't think you'd like threaten him, but what do they want you to do? You're letting him gamble, dude. He could be affecting someone's livelihood. Guy missing a field goal or whatever. That's what it's a joke. It's like, here's our gambling partners. Oh, by the way, don't be messaging our cash cows. You could hurt their feelings. That's a joke to me. It's like, I don't understand it. But Weird week. I didn't even talk about the NFL. I know there's some things that went on. John Harbaugh, dude, 1-5. It could be happening. They finally going to pull the trigger. Who do you think lasts longer, him or Tomlin?
I feel like Tomlin's going to last at least to the end of the year.
Oh, yeah, because every time Aaron Rodgers does something good, he points at him on the sideline. Did you notice that?
Yeah, like, hey, I did a thing.
Anyone else that didn't notice that, you listen to the show now. Every time Rodgers does something good, he's pointing at the sideline. It looks like he's pointing at Tomlin because Tomlin points back at him when they cut to the sideline. So you'll know that now, that they're like pointing at each other like, I'm saving your legacy, buddy. Hey, you're saving, I'm saving your legacy. It's like a thing where they're like, we were both losing there for a while. Maybe we can pull this off and have things happen. I was pissed last night, last thing for me, because Adunze catches a touchdown for my fantasy and wins me the game, right? No, wrong. They take it off the board and I lose because they said the tight end or whatever, the lineman wasn't lined up. On the replay, the announcer said, I don't know, he's on the line. I don't know why they call this penalty. That should be reviewable, right? That's what's scaring me with college and these games getting closer and closer because the officiating is 100% going to matter, right? I talked about Michigan's opponents not having any penalties called against them. I don't think it would have helped against USC, but you can't tell me that Michigan's played teams like Central Michigan. I see their guys get tackled. Like they don't call holding against the opponent. Like Michigan guys are so great that they're getting drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, but they don't need held. Like it makes no sense. So with the NFL, I see the Eagles guys, every tush push, they go early. That should be reviewable. And you should get endless challenges for that. That would stop the tush push, right? If you really don't want it in the game, they should petition and say, that's a reviewable play. If the guys move before the ball moves, which you know on replay, you can easily prove that, and they're going every single time, that's reviewable. Chiefs tackle. He's 5 yards in the backfield because he's scared. And he starts early. They throw a flag on him? Nah. Do they pick one random one on the Bears because they don't want them to beat Washington? Oh, hell yeah, they do. I'm telling you, they were mad that the Bears won that game last night. I had no dog in the fight. I was worried my man Moody was going to miss that kick because he struggled at San Francisco after being so good at Michigan. I don't know what's up. Hopefully he has stabilized. It was like a rain game. I thought, well, here comes the shank. They're going to lose. The officials will go home happy. Everyone will be pumped. They're like, we did it. We won the game for the Washington with that touchdown we took off the board. But now he hit it right down. It curved kind of weird because of the wind, and it made it right down the middle. And the Bears upset the officials and the Washington. And that was it. And I was annoyed because, I mean, fantasy, who cares, right? But like, why? I can't be the only one that got screwed on that. And if you have the replay and the guy's up and his hip is lined up before the other guy's leg, I think, which is the line or whatever, how can they not review that? They can review every other stupid thing. What was the one? They reviewed a pass that was a 1 yard gain for 3 minutes. But you didn't review the scoring play? That the official could be gambling, right? Because that's happened before. Could be gambling, called a illegal line shift knowing that they can't review it. Or illegal alignment, right? That in the booth they say, nope, they were lined up correctly. Don't know why that guy threw the flag. No repercussions though, right? Who cares? That's the new gambling thing. Get commercials about telling you not to, hey, just pay your money, dude. Don't talk to the players. Just keep losing. Keep losing money. That's how we make our money. We're loving it here. NFL, college football, doesn't matter. Get those bets in, Matt. Anything you want to talk about, Final Bell?
I actually had a really random thing happen. We were at a JV game last night, and we started the third quarter, and the power went out. The light shut off, scoreboard was off. We had like 20-minute, half-hour delay, and then had to finish out our game.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
Yeah. And then we had a long, exhausting bus ride back.
Well, your season's almost done though, right?
Yep, we got championship game weekend on Saturday night, and we got at least 2 more varsity games.
Yeah.
We're in must-win mode if we're going to qualify for playoff.
See, I only have a couple more weeks of coaching. I can't wait. I hate the dreaded, hey, school's on like break, so no one's going to be there. And I barely had enough guys show up. And we finally dropped one because our guys got so tired. We were tied 1-1 after the first quarter. And then they were like, Coach, we take a break? I'm like, no, guys. We have no subs. Like, this is it. I almost had to forfeit because I only had 2 players till like the last minute. And it was raining, so I'm assuming some other players just didn't want to play in the rain. Because I had one, I kept looking for them to show up. I'm like, where are you? Right? Looking around, like, I might have someone else popping in here. But that's youth sports. Can't control your roster. If it was like high school and kids weren't showing up, I think that'd be a different deal. But I'm ready for break. Anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, that's it for this week.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, Penn State fans. I'm sorry, I guess. I don't even know. Are you excited? I guess we'll have to wait and see. We can have a full breakdown on whatever coach you bring in. But thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.